Hello everyone, I know it's been a little while since I've uploaded a video, but with the advent of Star Resonance on the horizon and streaming not really working out as I'd like it to, there's a decent chance I will upload a lot more informative videos for Star Resonance in the future. Think like simple videos showcasing individual skills for each class, skill tree descriptions, dungeon runs, and whatnot, as I've done with some previous games. But to get back to the title of this video, I want to talk about some things I've noticed from watching the live streams and videos of the game on YouTube, and what I hope the developers will look into to possibly enhance the experience of the game in the future. Also, just to note, all the footage for this video will just be from the official Star Resonance YouTube channel. I don't have my own recordings because I never participated in any of the Chinese CBT, nor am I trying to play in the current official launch in China as well. But without further ado, let's get into it. The first, and in my opinion, one of the most important things I think they should change for the longevity of the game is to allow level and or gear syncing for dungeons. For one, from a new player perspective, they wouldn't have the issue of having a bunch of randoms who are already max level with high level gear just completely annihilate the dungeon. The new player may not even understand what's happening, and certainly they wouldn't learn anything from the mechanics of the game, especially if boss phases are just completely skipped. One of the other major aspects to this is that by syncing the gear, you would actually allow the difficulty of the dungeon to be maintained over time. The nightmare difficulty, or whatever the highest version of the dungeon, wouldn't become dramatically easier as a result of higher tier gear being available later on in the life of the game. It would allow players to challenge themselves with the harder content rather than just waiting to gear themselves enough to completely bypass the challenge in the first place. I also think, as a side tangent, a lot of my thoughts and comparisons will be from Final Fantasy XIV, which I've played for the last 2 years, and they do both level syncing and gear syncing in that game, but one of the critiques in that game is the level syncing aspects mean you lose a lot of your skills you'd have access to at higher levels. Star Resonance could differ in this aspect by just doing the gear syncing while allowing the usage of your higher level skills. Would this still lead to some amount of power increase due to having access to skills maybe you wouldn't have had access to otherwise? Possibly, but I believe it would still be enough for it to not ruin the difficulty by much, if at all. And certainly I think it would make doing those dungeons, even if it's synced gear-wise, be much more enjoyable since you will have access to all your tools. I also want to state that they shouldn't get rid of the ability to form a pre-made party and queue into the dungeon unsynced if you really want to, but it shouldn't be the norm to expect a regular player to just queue into a dungeon with a bunch of randoms and, have them all completely overgeared. And on to the next concern, and this one is rather short and sweet and already echoed by quite a few people in the West. Don't have ways to pay for power. There's really no reason for it. It's hard to justify for a Western audience, and it's not popular from an optics standpoint. A+, the publishers for the global and Western version of the game, should have the ability to change some financial aspects of the game, and this could be something they can change. I doubt that it would be anytime soon, or maybe even before launch, but it's something that I think many would be happy to see them address and fix, even if it was months down the line from the initial launch date. My third point I want to get into is largely something that the developers and the direction of the game has already been making some strides into doing, is the Holy Trinity that they have. The idea of there being a team composition where everyone has a role to perform I think is a great aspect for many different genres of games, but in particular I find it amazing in MMOs. And some of the recent changes from the beta, including the 25% damage increase for parties with tanks and a healer, and I believe tanks also got a buff to their defense compared to the other roles, and in general are able to actually tank attacks a lot more than DPS or healers. And from the footage I've seen dungeons as well, some streamers have commented on where if the tank dies in the mob pool, there's a decent chance that the entire party will wipe within like the next 5 seconds because the autos and the attacks from the mobs are nearly lethal, if not completely a one-shot on the DPS and healers. As much as some people might be bothered by this, I think that gives more reason to have these other roles, rather than just strictly having everyone always bring DPS. Plus, unlike some other MMOs, as far as I'm aware, all roles can revive other roles, meaning if your healer or tank is down, the DPS can revive them, or you may even be able to revive yourself using an item. but this is all mostly the changes they have done, and what I think they should continue doing is mainly working on the fight design for bosses to be more involved for non-DPS roles. For example, I've seen the Mecha Dungeon, which I believe is what people call it. I think it's the third dungeon in the story, and while I think the boss is fairly fun as a DPS, or even to a degree the healer, the separation phase, where the tank is separate from the rest of the party, does not seem that interesting for the tank. I wish moments and phases like that would be not even necessarily fully reworked, but just add more stuff for the tank to do. As far as I'm aware right now, they kind of just run around and make the boss just continuously chase them, but they don't actually really attack the boss. Perhaps instead they could just have mobs for the tank to kill, or maybe they need to destroy something while avoiding the boss to create the little portal that you need for the other players in the party to come back to the actual world or whatever it is before they die in the other dimension. This is, of course, just one example. I think there's many other mechanics that could be improved in similar ways for, even healers or, maybe other roles. But it's all just to say that I hope that they continue to focus on the specialization of roles and kind of reinforcing that holy trinity, because I think that there's a lot that they can do with it, and I think that the roles are capable of doing maybe a lot more if they let them. Class quests are something I thought would have been in the game, especially with designs and NPCs seemingly using every weapon for each class in the game. I thought there would have been more class quests that would guide you through the skill tree at points, including the subclass specialization stuff. But from what I saw in the game, it's basically you just get an item, talk to an NPC, and then kill a dozen or so enemies in a field to unlock the class, and then you're good. Aside from the aspect of shared levels between unlocking the new classes, which could be a good or bad thing depending on what your perspective of leveling multiple classes is, I feel like it's a missed opportunity to add some extra unique content to the game. I don't even think they need to be eccentric quests with lots of complexity and cutscenes and narrative value. I think even just simple ones that introduce you to new skills you may be unlocking at certain levels would be nice, and a way for new players to get introduced to the skills they've newly unlocked. Admittedly, it's not a super big priority, and something like this shouldn't be, but I do hope they consider implementing something to a similar degree later on in the game's development. Finally, another aspect of the game which they may want to consider for quality of life as well as for possible harder content in the future are more useful UI changes and information. In the original Blue Protocol, I believe you could move around the elements in the UI with relative freedom. I think that has been brought up in the Star Resonance as well, but I don't think it's been implemented into the game at all. It is something they should look into at some point, as people have wanted to move or adjust their class gauges as well as other elements of the UI. Furthermore, it would be a lot more helpful to have specific HP values of your teammates rather than just looking at the green health bars and kind of approximating how much HP you have or how much HP your party members have. It would also be valuable to even be able to see icons for buffs that your teammates have rather than only seeing your own. In other games, you can limit how many buffs you can see from your teammates, and I think it could be helpful to align buffs with your party that way. And additionally, it would be nice for the boss to have an HP percentage shown so that you can have a better idea of how far you are into defeating the boss. Again, many of these things are largely quality of life and are not necessarily game-changing or deal-breaking for many, certainly not myself, but I do think these elements to the UI or HUD would enhance the overall experience for all players. There are probably some other things I'll think of in the future, but until I can really play the game myself, I don't think it's that useful for me to speak much more on it. But if you are watching and hearing about this game for the first time, do feel free to sign up for the closed beta test if you're in Europe or North or South America, as the beta is currently open, and if you're in the official Discord, which you can join, I'll put a link to that in the description below as well. They have the timeline for when the signups for betas close and when the keys go out, and we don't have an exact time period for when the actual closed beta will be live, but we know that it'll at least be 10 days. So if you're looking to at least try out the game and you want to see if you could get into the closed beta, then check the links in the description or go to the official Discord, which I'll also have in the description, and you can find the signups there. And hopefully I'll get in as well, and if I do, then I'll see you in game. Thanks for watching.